I was washing the dishes. It was something that I usually did on a Saturday morning. After all, there's not much else you can do when there's nothing on TV, your wife is getting groceries, and your son is out in the yard playing. It's something to entertain your brain for about 10 to 15 minutes. You can just think and wash. It's simple. I heard the back door open, and I was right in thinking it was my son. He came through the hallway and out into the living room, that look of typical exhaustion on his face. As usual, he had been playing all morning out on the farm. He was dirty, his clothing littered with grass stains and muddy patches. But that was okay. I preferred having the clothes needed to be washed because he was outside rather than having to yell at him because he was spending too much time on electronic devices. 9-year-olds should be out and about, in my philosophy, not stuck inside operating the newest gadget to hit the stores. Crossing to the couch opposite the TV, he sat down and took a sigh of relief.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Nothing, Dad.
How was the grounds? Are the animals doing okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Find anything?
It was a question I usually asked him. It was kind of a tradition that had come up months before, when I had found him digging in the yard. He told me he wanted to be a paleontologist, find the fossils of dinosaurs for a living. Of course, he wasn't going to find bones digging as shallow as he did, but he usually found other things. Old wood, pieces of metal. One time he found part of an old wheel. We both came to the conclusion that it must have been left there and buried a long time ago. I had it cleaned of rust and dirt, and we hung it in his room as a kind of memorial, the day Matthew Johnson found the wheel. It was a legend that would live forever. Forever being until the day he grew out of his childhood and moved on to bigger things. But I could still appreciate it. The nostalgia would be there for me. I asked him the question every time he came back inside, and he always answered it immediately. But when I asked it today, he didn't answer. There was no excited yelling as he showed me the latest thing, no nearly tripping over the stairs as he ran up to put it in his room, and that told me something was wrong. I stopped doing the dishes and turned to face the couch, seeing that, although he was sitting upright, his head was face down towards the ground.
You okay, buddy?
Still no answer. Sighing, I walked over to the couch and sat down next to him.
What's wrong, Matt?
Nothing?
At this point, I knew he was lying. He had that tone in his voice, and I knew it all too well. The kind of half-sad, half-leave-me-alone reply. He always used it when he was trying to conceal something he had done. I'd seen it countless times throughout his life.
Matthew, I know you're not telling the truth.
There was a moment of silence before he looked up at me, a scared look on his face.
Promise you won't be angry with me.
God damn it. He has done something to the farm equipment.
I knew this was the case. He was messing around with something, it broke, and he had come back into the house, hoping to avoid being yelled at. I swallowed down a burst of frustration before answering his question.
I promise I won't be mad. Just tell me what happened.
There was a moment's hesitation before he spoke, but when he did, he said something that I had never considered would come out of his mouth. In fact, when he told me, I was completely lost for words. Reaching into his pocket, he fidgeted around for a little, and moments later, pulled a clenched fist out. He then held his hand out to me, and slowly spread his fingers. In the possession of my son were 3 brass bullets, each unfired. Having had experience with guns in the past, I knew they were from a handgun. 9mm rounds. Unmistakably. It took me a few seconds to compose myself, but after I had, I asked my son the only question that came to mind.
Matthew, You need to tell me where you found these.
I took the bullets from him as he answered.
Down behind the barn, where you guys keep the old tractor.
I knew the place. I hadn't walked down there in months. There wasn't really anything behind there to take care of. All the animals were on the main part of the land, and all the other vehicles we really needed were stored in the barn itself. The area behind the structure was more a storage area, for things that needed to be fixed and items we didn't really have room for in the main house.
Can you take me there? I need you to show me where you found these.
He muttered something like, "Yes, Dad," and got off the couch. Followed him out the back door and into the sunshine. As we walked towards the barn, I studied the bullets, moving them this way and that in my hand, trying to force the thoughts and questions in my head from racing at me at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Why would there be bullets behind the barn? What were they doing there in the first place? Are there others that are being used to hurt or kill anybody? Where's the gun that goes with them? Have these simply been buried in a good place? Kept in good condition by some sort of natural phenomenon of nature? Perhaps they're decades old, used by the previous farmer to put down sick animals.
I hoped that last thought was the right answer. I didn't want to find out these bullets were in fact brand new, and that whoever the gun belonged to had been living on the farm for weeks in secret. Months, even. Was he a hunter? A serial killer? A squatter that just happened to be carrying the bullets on him? The best answer was still bad, however, and I knew that whatever the truth would be, it wouldn't turn out to be sunshine and roses. We approached the barn, and Matthew led me around the outside to the back of it, stopping a few feet away from the tractor at the edge of the fence which marked the boundary of the farm. I was pointed down towards the ground. Upon following the direction, I found a small hole that had been dug there, around 50 centimeters in diameter and looking to be quite deep. I knelt down on one knee and began to study. It didn't take long to find the black box at the bottom of the hole. Reaching inside the earth, I grabbed hold of it and brought it to the surface, placing it on the ground beside me. Looking up at Matthew, I opened my mouth.
Did you find the bullets in here?
Slowly, he nodded, and with worry and fear gripping my heart, I reached towards the box, grabbed the top with my hand, and slowly opened it. As the light hit the space inside, what was revealed was a series of multiple items. To the far left of the box, more bullets were placed neatly in the space provided, each matching the ones in my hand. There was more ammunition. On the bright side, wherever the gun was, and whoever owned it, would have to come back here to get the rounds if they were to run out of what they currently had. To the right of the box was a folded piece of paper, and a small rectangular plastic card. Deciding to go with the smaller object first, I hesitated for a moment before I picked it up, turning it over. Shock and fear seized me once again. It was a driver's license. The identification picture was a red-headed girl that looked to be in her early 30s, the person that the license belonged to. Her name was Lisa Barth, born on the 12th of November, 1984.
Why is this girl's license buried in my backyard?
Again, the questions came flooding in. I didn't let them take hold of me. Not just yet. Putting down the license, I reached for the piece of paper. If indeed there was an explanation for this, perhaps it was written down. Picking up the paper and unfolding it, I saw that indeed something was written on it, and I wasted no time finding out what that was. Starting from the top, I made my way down the page, one sentence at a time. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Barth, I'm sorry to tell you this, and trust me, if it were up to me, you wouldn't even be getting this letter. But I just wanted to let you know that I was the one who killed your daughter. I didn't mean to do it. It wasn't like it was a planned thing, but I didn't have a choice. See, I was there and she was there, and it was just too much of a risk. After all, you can imagine after you have killed somebody else and there was a witness, you do have to get rid of that witness. If you don't, well, The police get involved, and jail time gets given out, and blame is put on people. And well, that's just too messy for my liking. You see, I need freedom. I can't spend my life in the big house, no. I'm just not made for it. If I were to spend any time in that place at all, I simply would not survive. But anyway, enough of me. This letter is about your daughter. I won't tell you the gory details, but just know that it was quick and she didn't suffer. It was over almost immediately after it had begun. Again, so sorry for your loss. Oh, and don't bother contacting the police for fingerprints on this letter. You will find none. Kind regards, Jennifer Johnson. I was frozen solid as I read the name of the person who wrote the letter.
Jennifer Johnson? No, it can't be. Not my wife.
I couldn't think, I couldn't move. I held my breath until I felt like I was going to suffocate. After all these years, all the things we had been through together, meeting her, the happy times, the fights, the day I asked her to be my wife, and the day we got married. The day she told me she was pregnant, everything. It was all a lie. No, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. My wife wasn't a killer. No, this was somebody else. Some other person named Jennifer Johnson. It was the only answer. It had to be the only answer. I knelt there in the dirt and grass for what felt like an eternity, just staring down at the letter in my hand. It seemed as though I was going to stay that way. That was until the sound of Matthew's voice asking me a question brought me back out of my head and into the real world once more.
What's wrong, Dad? Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?
I didn't know how to answer him.
Matthew, I need you to never come back to this spot, okay? Can you promise me?
As I said this, I folded the paper back up, then put it back in the box. After, I shut the lid and placed it back in the hole, filling it with dirt once again. If this was evidence of my wife murdering somebody, it needed to be covered up, both for my sake and the kids. If Jennifer was truly what the letter said she was, our lives could be in danger. Even if it wasn't true, it was better to be safe than sorry.
But why, Dad? Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything is okay. You just need to stay away from this place. Do you understand? It's off limits.
But...
Matthew, if you come back here, you will be grounded for life.
It was the only way I could think of having him stay away from this place. Pathetic, I know, but for a 9-year-old, being grounded was one of the worst things in the world. Or, so I hoped it was. The memories of my childhood had escaped me in that moment.
Oh, okay, Dad. I won't come back here.
He seemed to have gotten the message. I finished burying the box and stood back up.
Okay, come on, let's go back to the house.
I turned around, took him by the hand, and stopped dead in my tracks. Standing between us and the way back to the house was my wife. There was silence for what seemed like a lifetime. Her standing there, a blank expression on her face, and a grocery bag in her hand. Matthew and I looking back at her, my son wondering what was going on, and me not knowing what to do. She looked down at the now filled-in hole. I see you found my secret hobby. I didn't know what to do. At that moment, it was confirmed. My wife was a murderer. What was going to happen? How would Matthew and I get out of this? Was she going to kill us too? Raising the plastic bag now, Jennifer tilted her head to the side, and then said her next sentence as casually as I had ever heard somebody speak. I guess dinner is off then.